Today, former Health Secretary Matt Hancock, fresh from the jungle, you know, the one who got caught snogging his assistant, was terribly apologetic in the dock. Have a listen to this.
I am profoundly sorry for the impact that had. I'm profoundly sorry for each death that has occurred. And I also understand why, for some, it will be hard to take that apology from me. I understand that. I get it. But
I'd love to know. That was well cut. I'd love to know what you make of Hancock's apology. And why could our COVID inquiry go on for, well, as I said, almost to 2026? Sweden, I don't know how I did that, have already finished. Why does everything in this bloody country take so long? Please let me know what you think. Don't forget, Timmy Standby. You can get in touch with me on all the socials, Insta, Twitter at TalkTV, using the hashtag JKLive. Joining me to discuss this and today's other big stories are we've cobbled together. What a team tonight. Cheap at half the price. Former Tory advisor Leon Emirali. Not Andrew Tate. Former Labour advisor Frankie Leach, not Bridge, and journalist and campaigner. And he should be an MP, Mike Buckley. How are you, gang?
Very well, how are you?
The obvious question, I'm going to start with you, Frankie. Does Matt Hancock have any chance at all of ever redeeming himself in the eyes of the British public?
Probably not. What I would say is, I don't know if you will agree, but I think he's got some good comms advice here, which is try and look sincere. Although watching that clip, it was almost kind of too sincere. He's just not very good at being a normal human being when he's doing any kind of political comms. What I would say is that he's kind of like bridging this divide between, do I want to be a celebrity? Do I want to be a politician? I don't think he's going to be very good at either. He probably should just fade away and try and get a slightly high-paying job, maybe, and still be on the circuit. But I don't know what his future holds, but I just don't think he's good enough at it to be able to claw his way out of this, when also he did do a really bad job at a really difficult time for the country as well.
Yeah.
Mike, I'm going to try a different angle. I hope you don't mind. Is it fair that this is all on him? He blamed the World Health Organization today, didn't he?
It's not all on him. It's clearly on the government that since 2010 invested nothing in the health service. I mean, under Labour, this is, to make this political, under Labour we're increasing spending in the health service by 6% a year. Conservatives come in 20%. That drops to not just to lower, not to 2 or 3, drops to 0. So as the COVID inquiry has already discovered, we had a health service that had been underfunded for a number of years by the time we got to 2020 and the pandemic. Matt Hancock could have done something to fix that as Health Secretary, clearly didn't. But as he said today, he was told when he came in as Health Secretary, we're well prepared for a pandemic. We weren't.
Can I ask?
What they done was to bury people, not to protect people.
Mate, I completely agree. I've said before, I spent 9 months visiting my old man through glass before he died. Can I say this, though? We'll take your point that we weren't prepared financially as a health service. In fact, I'll move this to Leon. Would any government, even if the health service had been tip-top, would any government have sorted this, organised this, answered everything that was questioned of them by COVID in the right way? Surely the one thing about this COVID inquiry is there's blame across the board. I'm not sticking up for Matt Hancock in any way.
Yeah, no, I fully agree with you, Jeremy. And look, Mike, you're saying that it's the Conservatives' cuts to blame, but we've been planning for the next pandemic since the Spanish flu ended in 1919. So it's not one party's fault that we weren't prepared. It is successive governments, and it's actually the machinery of government that got it wrong. And like you say, Jeremy, a pandemic happens. What does the public expect? You can't just take a blueprint off a shelf, no one dies. It's a pandemic. It's going to be tough. It's going to be difficult. And I think that, Matt Hancock, I don't want to stick up for him too much, but I do think he needs to have some cut slack.
How much hostility is there towards him in the Tory party?
Yeah, I think there's a bit of a sense of what's he doing with himself at the minute. What is he trying to do with his career? Because, as Frankie says, straddling this period between being an MP...
Unfortunate phrase for Matt Hancock, straddling.
Well, yeah, exactly. But, he's better off sitting on a board, taking some private sector job than trying to be in the showbiz world. Because if there's an MP that's not cut out for it, it's Matt Hancock.
Yeah, absolutely. The only thing I would say, though, is that when we talk about whether the government was prepared or not and whether it was the machinery of government, I think the point is that we messed up on a monumental scale here. I mean, absolutely monumental. And the thing that I think was different here than anywhere else was senior members of the government were not even following the rules that they set. The problem is, I know, but the thing is that all of these inquiries, all it does for the Tory party is rehash that same thing over and over again.
I am not, in hindsight, and I think I probably changed my view, I am not sticking up for anything that went on in Number 10. I absolutely mean that. The point that I always want to make, Mikey, and Frankie, is this, right? Forget Boris Johnson. You arrive in 10 Downing Street to a job that you've always wanted. Whether you're good or not down the line, I don't know. You've got a choice. Because I remember it. I remember Johnson coming on television that night and thinking, geez, man, this isn't going to happen ever again. Do you destroy the economy or do you make, unfortunately, a decision that's going to cause deaths? I don't think there's anybody around this table, anybody in government, any political party that would have taken that decision and thought, God, this is the right way to go. I just think there was mass confusion.
I'll tell you one thing I don't understand, right,
Yeah.
is countries like South Korea, they'd lived through SARS, they'd lived through MERS, many versions of the coronavirus pandemic. Those are also coronaviruses, happened about 20-odd years ago. They'd been through many versions. They'd learned how to cope with the coronavirus pandemic. They had best practice. They implemented best practice soon as COVID-19 appeared. And as a result, they got far, far lower death rates than we have. Our government did not copy what they did.
But then look at Sweden. They let everybody run around, and apparently at the beginning it was good, and then it wasn't good. I'm going to say this to you, not because I'm criticising. The Labour Party wanted even more lockdowns. You know they did.
Lockdowns saved lives.
Yeah.
I mean, absolutely.
But they ruined lives as well,
They had to. There was no alternative. There was no alternative to lockdowns.
At the very beginning, I agree, there was no alternative.
We could have had targeted lockdowns as they had in those countries. They'd learned best. Why didn't our government just ring up the South Korean government? You seem to know what you're doing. Let's copy what you're doing. Oh, this is what we're doing. Brilliant, great, do that. Instead, they ignored them and went away and did their own thing.
It's far too simplistic, Mike, because listen, Asia have, as you say, have been through pandemics before in a way that we haven't. You know, they've had SARS, they've had other.
But then why not lean on them then?
Because they've got the infrastructure.
I know, because I wrote some of them saying this is what they're doing. Why don't we do it? Right at the beginning of the pandemic in March 2020.
This is about Boris Johnson's role in, global Britain. We could have done exactly what Mike says, which is lean on the international expertise of countries with whole teams who have been dealing with this kind of stuff for years, and they didn't. They absolutely messed it up.
We put a poll out. Do you think the lockdowns were a mistake? How many people do you think said yes, it was a mistake?
Look, I'm sure that loads.
No, how many people do you think?
Probably low.
78%. Guy, not just a mistake, but criminal. Roy, I had a great time during the lockdowns. I wish we could do more of them. Maybe once a year during February or something, when there's not much else going on and I can stay at home. How frightening is that?
In the global tally, we're the 20th worst country for death rates per capita, despite the lockdowns. With the lockdowns, we'd have been at number one.
Exactly.
Too many people died in this country. Way too many people died. I'm sorry for all of them and grieved over all of them. I mean, none of them are my family, but it doesn't make any difference, does it? But if we hadn't had the lockdowns, it would have been double, treble, quadruple that number. It would have been catastrophic.
Colin, it's very obvious, Jez, to anyone with the sense that lockdowns had minimal effect on transmission of COVID-19 and a major effect on social and mental health, both at the time and subsequently. Completely agree. Victoria, lockdowns affected everybody, but the effects it had on our youth is unforgivable. And then we talk about education and we talk about... All I'm trying to say is it was an impossible position.
I'm not saying the word adverse impact's the word, but they saved lives. I mean, if you look at the graph, COVID was going up like that, exponential. Lockdowns flattened it off. It kept it flat. It didn't bring the rates down, but it flattened it off. That was the best they could do.
But also, just in terms of the question that you asked the public, if you say, were lockdowns a mistake, that is a question that people are going to answer in loads of different ways. Were they a mistake in the sense that the government put everyone under lockdown and then messed up all of the things they had? They had a really good thing going when they had everyone in lockdown. They brought the rates down. And then what did they do? They introduced Eat Out to help out, putting everyone in the same place again, getting everybody socialised. And then we went back in lockdown. So, yeah, it was a mistake. It was a mistake from the government to, yes, put in people in lockdown, but then not follow through with anything.
But then, all right, so let me tell you something, and then Leon will back me up here. And I'm not sticking up for any political party. So you bring in the lockdown, it balances itself out. Every single person, every newspaper, every commentator saying, this is outrageous, this is against our liberty. So you get on and on that. So you give a little bit and they rise, so you lock it down again. What I'm trying to say is I'm not sticking up for Matt. I think Matt Hancock is despicable, right? And I think they made mistakes. I just think there's a part of me that thinks it was an impossible thing to do.
The way out would have been working test and trace.
Yeah,
we spent billions on test and trace. It didn't work. In other countries, they had targeted test and trace, and it worked. And as a result, lots of people were able to just go out and live their lives. But other people were locked down for shorter periods.
But also, it was an exceptional situation.
That's what we've got to do.
It was an exceptional situation that required exceptional action. action. And this is what people, I think, really need to understand,
Frankie,
which is that it was a horrible situation, but we had to do drastic action. Of course, it had impacts on people's mental health. It drove me to the brink of insanity, but it probably saved
we are living with the consequences of lockdown to this day, where businesses had to shut, where children couldn't have an education, where young people couldn't get their first job. And I think it is bizarre that we just ignore that.
We're not ignoring it, but we're also living with more than 200,000 people who died.
And that is a tragedy.
That would have been 400,600. Well, how many is too many?
It was a pandemic.
How many is too many?
It was a pandemic where ultimately people are going to die. What planet are you living on if you think we can handle this pandemic
with a single life?
Of course we do.
I don't think that.
Of course
it's the job of government to minimise that number, and they failed in that.
Exactly.
But
we want less people to die, and if drastic action means that less people die, then frankly, I would do it again.
The government's job was to protect the NHS.
No, it wasn't. It was to protect lives.
No. Well,
the job of the NHS is to protect life,
government also,
not to continue existing as some national icon.
The government also has to deliver for the economy. The government also has to deliver.
But what's the point of the economy?
How have they delivered for the economy with the recent manifestos?
I'm not going to stand here and stick up for the government. A lot's gone. I am sitting. Good point.
Final word. Go on, Liam.
I'm not going to stick up for the government and say they did everything right, but I do think you're living on cloud cuckoo if you think we could have just taken off a blueprint from the shelf, no one would have died, it would have been fine. That's the world we live in.
What I think is quite interesting, to sum it up, is that two left-leaning political voices are saying that maybe the government, in making that decision, should have shown a bit more strength and not listened to all the people who said, let's go, and seen it through. The problem is, it was like that, wasn't it? The graph was the graph of people who were suffering from it was mirrored by the government because it was here, there and everywhere. But everybody was in.